Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hang on, there's an intro going.
Oh, okay. I heard 3, 2, and I heard nothing.
Good morning and welcome to Ed's World, where it's always morning, even in the afternoon. My name is Jay Edgar, and I am joined today by Quest Fanning, but it's going to be voice only this time. We've been struggling a little bit with technical difficulties, but Quest has been kind enough to pull me out of a bind in which I didn't have a guest just a few minutes ago, but he was able to read over the itinerary and figure out where it was that he needed to be, and now we're here. So, Quest, welcome to Ed's World.
Well, thanks a lot, Ed. Glad to be on.
It's been a little bit of a busy week, and as we looked at the itinerary and the name that's on the itinerary right now, we see the fact that up until 5 o'clock Central Time, I was expecting to have somebody else on this show, and hopefully she'll be kind enough to come back at some point in the near future. But the show must go on, and the news stops for nobody. And we've got a pretty full show going on for us this week. Looks like we've got some things to talk about with Hurricane Dorian as it's coming along. Chick-fil-A opened in Toronto and it came under high protest, so we'll talk a little bit about that today. As we always do on this show, we'll talk a little bit about 2020 and what's going on there and some of the things that are shaking up as we lead into the week of the next debate. Dave Chappelle had a stand-up special that was deemed too dangerous for anybody on the mainstream world, but I look back at some of the comedy of years past, and we'll talk a little bit about what's gone on before there and what used to be acceptable and what's acceptable now. And we had an incident about some privacy for another prominent YouTuber, and it brings up the question of safety and security for all of us. So we'll talk a little bit about that. It is going to be all of this and more on the very first ever live streamed episode of Ed's World. Thanks for tuning in on YouTube. And you can always go back and check this out redone over on BitChute. Thanks for checking us out over there. Make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. Ed's World will be available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher for Tuesday morning. You can pick us up on the go. You can take us anywhere you want. And if you're over on iTunes, make sure you leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts. Ed's World is proudly partnered with the Freedom Scoop Media Group. And one thing we've got to cover while we're talking about Freedom Scoop over here is the fact that we are doing our part to try and make sure that the people that are affected by this hurricane, no matter where they are not going to be cleaning up for very long, and making sure that they've got some charity to take care of them afterwards, because everybody needs a hand up sometimes, and nobody can predict Mother Nature. So we will be, hold on a sec, let me get this done. On-air production, it's always great. We will be selling these great t-shirts here over at the Freedom Scoop Media Group. Now, we're selling a lot more t-shirts than this one, the America is Stronger t-shirt. But as long as we have the America is Stronger Up t-shirt, that one doesn't go into anybody's pockets or profits. That is all going out to charity. Everything, all the proceeds that come from this t-shirt go to the relief efforts for Hurricane Dorian. So make sure you go over there, check that out, pick up one of those great t-shirts, show your pride for independent media, your pride for America, and the fact that America is stronger than a formerly Category 5 hurricane. After a lengthy introduction, as always, it is time to find out about the most important part of Ed's World. So, Quest, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Brooklyn born and bred. My background's in computer science. I have a master's degree from Polytechnic Institute, and which then became NYU Poly, which then became NYU Tannen School of Engineering. I'm currently working in market research. I have an extensive background in doing a lot of volunteer work. I was involved with the local neighborhood association, Plegna, for quite a while there. I was the president for a few years, and there was dealing with the government. I've made several political changes over the past few. I have a libertarian point of view at this point.
I see. Looks like we're already going to be getting some connection issues going on here. Looks like you distorted a little bit while you were in that description, but I think a lot of us got what was going on here.
Okay, cool.
So one of the questions that I always like to ask, and I didn't know going into this, you volunteered to step up, and I was very happy about that. But I did see some podcast information in the description of your Twitter, rather. Do you do a podcast, or are you in support of something? I know that you're connected with a lot of the more libertarian-minded people I know.
I'm a producer for the Rebellion with Banks and Shane. I do try to listen to quite a few libertarian podcasts. Some of the usual suspects like like the Brian Nichols show and stuff like that.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, how did you get into alternative media, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it's kind of like your sixth sense of you're like, I've seen this before, I've seen this before, I've seen this before. I can kind of you sniff out there's a narrative at play here, and then you're like, oh, this is actually bringing me some new information. Can I verify this? That kind of thing. You're trying to think independently. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes you feel like you're being fed a line, and sometimes you feel like like this person is actually trying to give me a new insight.
Okay. And you mentioned Brian Nichols' podcast. He is actually supposed to be on this show next week. I know looks like you're associated with Steffi Cole as well, who's been on this show before and is planning on doing so again. So it looks like you've got a good network of verified people that are helping you come through this journey. So that's always good.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. Yeah, there's a lot of great liberty people out there, and I really, I think that it's good for us to communicate. It's like we don't always have all the answers, and it's good to keep an open mind.
Absolutely is. Well, we've got the introductions down here, and I do want to take a second again because this was a last minute thing, and thank you for coming on and coming in the clutch and helping me out here. But what say we talk about the topics we got on board today?
Sounds good to me.
All right. First thing I want to mention, as I mentioned in the beginning with the Relief Efforts T-shirt for Hurricane Dorian, Dorian made landfall briefly in North Carolina this past week. It was downgraded from a Category 5 down into a Category 2, I believe, is what it made landfall at, but it might have just been a Category 1 tropical storm. But that hasn't stopped everybody from politicizing all of this. So I know that you had mentioned a little bit off mic that you had seen a little bit about the Sharpie Gate story here, but what have you seen so far?
Honestly, not a lot. I'm just kind of amazed that we see folks even trying to politicize this. I mean, it's like, let's just try to see what we can do to help these people. I mean, as opposed to and where resources are needed, that kind of thing. I mean, honestly, I prefer that a little bit more money be kept in local communities for them to take care of it themselves rather than depend on FEMA's fiats, but that's just me.
Well, I mean, FEMA will go one way, absolutely, but private charity will go even further than FEMA, from what I can see. And like
Oh,
Freedom
absolutely.
Scoop is reaching out to try and make sure that we've helped everybody to go where FEMA doesn't go and do what FEMA doesn't do. But I mean, there are dozens of charities across this country. I'm willing to bet anybody who does any sort of charity, you could go on their website right now and see something about Hurricane Dorian.
Well, I think that it's one important facet of when it's a voluntary thing and when you have a charity where folks are invested emotionally in the outcome. You're going to get a better result. You're going to be more agile. You're going to be more in tune with the needs of the community.
Hmm. No, and that's something I've been talking about for a long time, just on general, is I mean, the community knows what the community needs better than any federal bureaucrat could ever know what the community needs.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing, and that's one of the problems that I have with all the power trying to concentrate over in DC is the fact that the people on the East Coast don't know what we need in Wisconsin.
Mm.
No offense, I see that. I saw that you are.
I certainly don't know what you need there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, and the needs that you need in Brooklyn are significantly different than anything that I would need over here in a rural neighborhood between two bigger cities in the middle of the country. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just in people in North Carolina need hurricane relief. I guarantee you that I am never going to need hurricane relief as long as I live in this state,
Unless you're on vacation.
unless I'm on vacation.
That was half the stories we saw from the Bahamas, right? What was folks returning home, and as opposed to what's going to happen to these folks who can't go somewhere.
What do you mean?
I mean, the stories about the Bahamas, in the Bahamas, where it's like folks cutting their vacations short, as opposed to, I feel really bad for. I mean, it's terrible that you had to cut your vacation short, but I feel much worse for the folks that live there.
Oh, absolutely. I understand that entirely. I'm just a couple weeks ago, before anybody knew that Hurricane Dorian was ever forming, I was actually, starting to pencil in a vacation just to go down to the Bahamas for a couple of days coming up here in December.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm okay, is this even going to be a viable vacation anymore? Am I going to be able to do that? December's only 3 months away.
Yeah, I mean, it takes quite a while for them to rebuild, and for they probably canceled a ton of flights in that time frame already.
They most likely have, but I don't know. Is there a Bahamas, right? Is there something for me to go to at this point?
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's one of the things too that I'm thinking about while we're going through and we're talking about this is the fact of I do want to take some time and talk to my business partner Jake over at Freedom Scoop and make sure that we can get some charities that go down to the Bahamas. I know he was focused on getting relief efforts done here in the United States, but I mean what they got in North Carolina was like a fraction of what they got in the Bahamas. The Fox News anchor was down there and said he could smell the death of the dogs just laying there in the water.
That's terrible.
So I am going to try and push to make sure that we get some relief effort going down into the Bahamas. But I do want to go back and talk about the politics of the hurricane. Jake and I last week talked a little bit about the fact that the climate change crowd wants to try and make this into their centerpiece because we got a Category 5 hurricane, but we've supposedly never seen destruction like that on this continent ever before, in spite of the fact that we have 7 Category 5 hurricanes on record so far.
I happen to live on the top of a geographic feature called the Heights here in Brooklyn, and there's basically a slope that goes about 2 miles down to the water. I'm about 65 feet above sea level, and this is the end of the last terminal moraine for the last ice age. A little storm is nothing.
Yeah. But yet, yeah, that's what they want to hold to. I remember listening to Limbaugh probably 5 weeks ago. I was going to work. I was listening to him, and he was trying to claim that the left is trying to call a small tropical depression up in the northern Atlantic. He was sitting there. He got a bunch of weather alerts on his phone saying that this tropical storm was highly dangerous, and it was up Greenland area in the northern Atlantic. But we were told last year that we were going to have more hurricanes than ever before this year because of climate change. And Hurricane Dorian, it starts with a D. This is the fourth major storm that we've ever had, and the first one we've heard of on this continent.
You cut out for a second there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there was one of my favorite books. If you'll indulge me for just a second.
Absolutely.
It is Factfulness by Hans Rosling. The subtitle is something like 10 facts about how the world's better than you think. And he tries to put things in perspective. We tend to have a very, as humans, we tend to kind of not look at the positive and be very focused on the negative, and the news amplifies that to the nth degree because that's what we're going to pay attention to. There was a story he tells in the book, which I found really interesting, where he was at a TED conference, and backstage, Al Gore approached him about doing a bubble graph. That was one of the things that Hans and his associates were famous for, were these bubble graphs that showed you the way that things evolve. And he wanted Hans to do a bubble graph of the worst case scenario for climate change.
Okay.
And Hans is a big believer in climate change, and that is something that you really need to deal with. But he said, if you over-exaggerate things over time, you will lose credibility. I think we see this playing out.
You think so? You think that's the direction that we're going with all of this?
I think that there's been too much over dramatization of the issue. It seems that there may be issues with our climate changing, but the way that things are over dramatized by some environmentalists seems to actually take away from their case. You know what I'm saying?
I do. Before we get out of this hurricane topic here, there's one other side that I want to touch on when we talk about this. And that was the claim that the hurricane could reach over and hit Atlanta after it completely missed Florida. That was one of the concerns that we had last week when we were doing the show, was the fact that two of the other podcasters that go on the Freedom Scoop site were supposedly right in the path of the hurricane. And we're used to seeing Florida get destroyed every year, but it doesn't mean that we want to see it happen anymore. But then everything twisted and turned and went north, and then the next prediction was that it was going to go into Alabama. And it didn't go into Alabama, and now the next prediction is, it went into North Carolina, but now it's going to pick up steam because of cold water and go up into Nova Scotia in an unprecedented event.
That would be unprecedented, yes.
At what point do we sit back and say that the weathermen, A, have no idea what's going on, but B, that it is really hard to track something like this, and politics has nothing to do with it. Weather changes. Excuse me.
When I was in college, I tutored a bit, and one of my fellow tutors, his son worked for the National Weather Service, and one thing he said was, we can't properly predict the weather for more than 3 days. Anything after that, you might as well look at the almanac.
Do you prefer the old farmers, or?
I actually have no preference myself.
You gotta love the fact that that's still in circulation after Franklin was the one that started that.
I love anything related to Ben Franklin.
That is amazing. Well,
yeah.
I do say a prayer for the people that are affected and in the path of this hurricane. I hope that your destruction is minimal, and whatever destruction you have, I hope that you can rebuild quickly, and I hope that we can put out some help to help your efforts.
Amen.
But with that in mind, I think it's time that we I'm going to check in the live chat just for a second here, see if there's anybody in there that has said hi. Looks like my friend Ron Helton has shown up and says the sun is the major driver of climate, not man. So that's something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And for the listeners, because this is the first live streamed episode, so this will be the first time that I've had a chance to actually have a live chat going on. I will check the live chat between topics and just see if anybody else has had anything to do with this. I did my little ed talk over on Saturday, and I was able to watch the live stream, but that was what that talk was for. This one, I'm not going to be able to watch the live chat just as much, but I'll check in between topics. So if you want to comment on things, I'll check in and I'll read the stuff on the air. But let's take some time now and talk about Chick-fil-A. So this past week, Chick-fil-A opened their first store in Toronto. Now, this is something that they're planning on expanding a little bit more on. They are planning on 5 more stores just in Toronto itself over the next 3 years. Are planning on adding 5 more franchises up there. It is a franchised out store. It's privately owned. It's not corporate or anything like that. But that doesn't change the fact that as soon as the store opened, there was a major, what they call a die-in, sitting outside of the store, in which protesters, mostly holding signs that showed LGBTQ slogans and rainbow flags, laid down and pretended to be dead in front of the store. Yet they didn't block the door, and people were pretty easily able to walk around them and get into the store to get their delicious Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches. Now, from Brooklyn, I would think that you would be a little bit closer to Toronto than I am, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know that in Brooklyn, you may get the same reaction to a Chick-fil-A over there. What have you seen on this so far?
Well, actually, we have one Chick-fil-A in Brooklyn by the Barclays Center, and out of nowhere, like, I don't know, it seemed like it was overnight. We only have like 8 or 10 in Manhattan, and I went to one a few blocks from my work last week, and no, it was a week and a half ago. Sorry, and it was delicious.
Oh, I love Chick-fil-A.
It was packed to the gills. There were so many people, and they were efficiently taking care of the orders. I had my food in hand in 5 minutes. I mean, I swear to God, there must have been like 200 people in the store. It was wonderful.
They just put a Chick-fil-A in Madison a couple of years ago, and Madison, Wisconsin is no friend to conservative values. I can say that right off the bat. I worked there for 5 years.
College town?
Well, college town and a capital town.
Yeah.
You know, the protesters always go where the capital is so they can go and protest the capital. Mm-hmm. But there are actually 2 Chick-fil-A's in Madison. The one over on the side of the town that I worked on, it was just the same. I mean, half the time I went there, and it was only a handful of times I ever went there, but half the time I went there, I had to park in the Taco Bell parking lot because there was no space in the Chick-fil-A parking lot whatsoever, and then walk over there and go get my delicious chicken sandwich. But there, once again, you're in, you're out, and you're eating your sandwich in just a few minutes.
I mean, customer service, delicious food. I don't know if a die-in's going to affect loyalty with that.
I want to say one thing as we're going here, because we are singing the praises of Chick-fil-A awful lot. Chick-fil-A has not sponsored or paid anything into this podcast, but hey, you know, I'm kind of poor over here. So, yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, just distort for a second.
That's fine. So, you know, Chick-fil-A is not paying for any of this praise. We're just heaping it on freely because they actually deserve it. They're one of the few corporate companies that actually deserve this. And that is the thing with Chick-fil-A. I mean, they close on Sundays so that their employees can spend time with their families. They don't try and get somebody to work around it. And, you know, there's religious conviction that goes along with that. I understand that. But, I mean, it goes beyond that. I've witnessed an employee at a Chick-fil-A go out and change an elderly veteran's tire in the parking lot. Wasn't asked to, didn't have to, and he just got up and did it.
There are many stories like that that I've heard. It seems like there's a certain ethos within the company that I wouldn't specifically ascribe to religion, just that these people care.
Oh, it's understandable. But let's go back onto this specific one. And I guess my biggest question, because the CEO of Chick-fil-A has come out and said that he's not against homosexuality, he's not homophobic, and he will gladly serve anybody who comes into his restaurant. He just doesn't feel the need to support the marriage side of this. Why are there so many protests?
I think that sometimes people just need a target, you know, and it's a popular company, therefore, the idea of them losing business would gain traction.
Well, one of the things that I think funny about that is the fact that, yes, we see this all the time about Chick-fil-A, and they're one of the top news rated companies out there. They're in the news all the time. We never see this about Hobby Lobby. And Hobby Lobby is
That's a
in the
good
same
point.
boat.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any theories why?
Well, I've been into some Hobby Lobby. I've not been in every Hobby Lobby, but I've been in a few. And some of the stores, they generally don't build a new store when they have one. They generally take over a building that was previously something else. I know that the one in Kenosha, Wisconsin, they took over the Pick and Save when the Pick and Save built a brand new building. Pick and Save is a local chain grocery store over here. So when the grocery store moved into the new building, the Hobby Lobby moved into its place. But they'll move in, but they don't always. I guess Hobby Lobby always seems a little bit dirty to me. I mean, I love going there. They've got good prices on good craft stuff. I dabble in candle making a little bit, so if I don't get something on Amazon and I want something right away, I can just walk over to Hobby Lobby. It's right there. It's a great price, but it's always a little dingy, and I don't think they get quite the traction in the mainstream as a delicious chicken sandwich that everybody suddenly loves to eat. And even before they were controversial,
So a little less attention then.
yeah, I mean, even before the controversy for Chick-fil-A, everybody that I knew that had eaten at Chick-fil-A, my cousin would go there all the time, and he always sang the praises of their sandwiches before they ever got famous for anything.
Mm-hmm.
So they were well known as a good sandwich from the beginning.
I think it's unfortunate that a lot of companies are kind of feeling pressed to make point in time. You know, I mean, you, you should provide a quality product that serve. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. You're breaking up just a little bit, but we'll figure this out as we go. What do you think is going to be the short-term effect for the company? I know long-term they seem like they're not going to be slowing down anything. Does this boost them short-term? Does this hinder them at any point? Does this hinder their plans to open more stores in Toronto?
I think that the protest looks silly. So if anything, it gains them publicity without costing them anything.
But is it a good Christian value to take advantage of that publicity?
I think that they should let the customer decide.
That is the most liberty-minded response I've ever heard to an honest question in my life, and I love it very much. Thank you for
Thank
that. All right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll check the live chat right away, see what we've got going on here. Looks like we've got some more people in here. Ron is back. He says he'll be back in 5. He's got to put the hens to bed. So I was just in a Discord server earlier. We were talking about the fact, and I'm not, because the town is so small, I'm not going to mention the town that I live in. But the town next to me, where I used to live, it just had chickens wandering the street randomly.
That's hilarious.
They just walked the street freely, and nobody cared. We were talking about chickens in a Discord server, and I had to bring that right back up because nobody cared. You could always get fresh eggs. Essentially what it was is a lot of the people just had free-range chickens so they could get the eggs and sell the eggs. That was a big thing in the town over there. But yeah, it's just you randomly walk into the gym and you see a chicken walking around.
Don't see that much in New York.
I would imagine not. You don't see it much in Boston either. I know that we had video up for a second before we went live here, but I don't know if you saw what was behind me there. But
I did notice that, and I chose to ignore it.
Well, we could make an entire podcast talking about that rivalry.
Yeah, I think we could, but another day.
Yeah. So let's take some time and talk about a topic that I always squeeze into the podcast because there's always zany news that's going on about this, and that is the 2020 race and what is to come and what has come out of the last week out of this. So the first thing I need to mention is the fact that this coming Thursday is the next debate. It looks like Tulsi is out to the chagrin of a lot of people. Looks like they've
Included.
Yes. Yeah, actually, I'm kind of sad too. I don't necessarily want Tulsi Gabbard to be president, but I want to see her sharpen her claws on Elizabeth Warren.
Amen.
But we all, as we always do, we've got some news surrounding the people that are going to be on the debate and the people that are standing out in front. So let's go down the list here. To start with, Elizabeth Warren has condemned the fossil fuel sector, saying, much like Hillary Clinton did, and much like Barack Obama did, ironically enough, that these jobs were not going to be anymore. We were going to be moving out of fossil fuels and coal for energy, and these people were going to be out of work. She says that this is all going to be going away. We're going to be going over into straight clean energies, and then Biden followed suit for the same thing. One of the things I have to mention when I hear about this is the fact that Hillary said she was going to shut down coal plants and put a lot of people out of work too, and Hillary Clinton is not the president. So where do you see this going?
Well, I mean, I think I am 100% behind getting rid of any subsidies for fossil fuels and for anything else. We need to let the markets decide, and I mean, I think that one strategy that we've seen rejected way too much by people who think that climate change is the end of the world is nuclear. For all the inefficiencies of our earlier plants, there's some statistic that basically, if you took every bit of spent rods and spent nuclear fuel that is waste at this point and put them on a football field, they'd be stacked only 15 feet high. There's a lot of room in this world.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one thing too. I mean, you hear Poole talk about it, you hear Christensen talking about it, you hear Sticks talk about it. And it's the same thing over and over again. The same people condemn fossil fuels and they condemn nuclear, which is good. It's a clean energy. A lot of people say we've got this acrid smoke and everything that comes off a nuclear plant. That's steam. It's water vapor.
It is steam. That's actually from the cooling process, and it's a totally, from a systematic approach that is separate, is physically with the fission material.
Yeah. And nuclear, I mean, when we started with nuclear, we were doing it solely for destruction. But yes, we figured out how we could use fission in a controlled manner in order to make energy out of. And yet, that seems to be the thing that everybody wants to condemn. The candidates, I believe, have a more corporate interest into this because they're vested into things that would go under if nuclear were to take off because it's very efficient. But, I mean, we've got a generation of people that have all seen the horror film on Netflix about Chernobyl that think that this is going to happen as soon as they see a nuclear plant as well. And I'm sure The Simpsons didn't help for 30 years either.
The three-eyed fish, yes.
Yeah.
Do you know the death toll from Fukushima Daiichi? Do you know the death toll from that one?
I do not.
It's 2,600 people, and none of them were from radiation. None of them. It was the evacuation. A bunch of elderly people having to leave very quickly, and none of it is attributable to actual radiation. It was panic.
And panic is a big killer of things, too.
Mm-hmm. And think about this: we've seen in Germany, France, and Japan many nuclear plants close down. And I don't have the numbers in front of me at the moment, but if you look at how much power has had to be switched back to dirtier forms of energy production, you're talking tens of thousands of lives that have been shortened. Let's say young people, old people, the otherwise infirm, who are breathing in less healthy air.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's not a zero cost to switching to something besides nuclear. When you turn off that nuclear plant, you're turning something else on.
Absolutely.
There are some people who are kind of purists, kind of have a puritanical view about energy production, that we just need to do without, and this and that. And the fact of the matter is that if I do with less, if I turn off the air conditioner a little bit earlier in the summer, if I do a little bit, my little bit, right? There's somebody who has just entered the middle class in some other part of the world who wants, he wants a comfortable house, who wants to come home to an air conditioned space, in the middle of summer, in the middle of 110-degree weather. So we're not going to simply scrimp our way to a greener world.
I agree and disagree with that, actually. I'm not going to lie to you about that, but
Okay.
we're not going to scrimp our way to a greener world in the way that you think that we're going to by shutting things off. But one of the things that, we've seen carbon emissions drop in this country, and one of the things that I can attribute to that, from what I've seen, from what I actually see from working around electronics, which I've done. I was a mechanic for a while, and one of the things that I've got a great excitement for every time I get a new vehicle is I want to change all the lights over into LED. But it goes beyond that. I mean, we've got LED lights. Every fixture or a light in this house right now is LED.
Mm-hmm.
Look at our TVs.
So the efficiencies of technology will help through this process.
The efficiency of technology are going to do huge things for carbon emissions if we continue to go down carbon, but they're also going to make any other kind of energy production more efficient as well. I mean, remember the great big tube TV you used to have that was just as deep as it was wide?
Yeah.
And put off thousands of therms of heat every day as soon as you turned it on?
Yes.
And just drew all kinds of kilowatts of energy. Now you've got that little flat screen TV that barely sips any energy whatsoever.
Hey, I've got a projector, but it's still less than my old cathode ray tube.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're being more efficient on how to gain the energy. We're learning how to burn the fuels more efficiently as well. Cut them with garbage, maybe take care of some of the garbage out of this, but our energy usage is going down drastically just as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I think your point is well taken. Efficiency gains are, I think, where we're going to see a lot of gaining ground. I don't think encourage anybody who's moving up in the world to not live an enjoyable life with a good quality of living. I do think though that it really comes back to a large degree to how our energy is produced, and that we need to let the markets decide things, and we also need to not so heavily politicize or cast aspersions on technologies that could help us in the future.
Yeah. And I'm not one of the conservatives out there either that'll stand there and say, well, solar has no place in this world. Solar has a place in this world, and people are going to develop more technology to make the solar panels less toxic. That's been part of the biggest problems, is that the solar panels are so toxic right now that if they leak or something breaks, I mean, your soil is fallow at that point underneath that. You can't do anything with it anymore. But I want to see a solar world, but we're not there yet.
Absolutely, and we need to bridge the gap. We can't just we can't over subsidize anything. Actually, I don't believe in subsidizing any of the energy industries. But even if you try to subsidize like crazy, you're not.
As long as we're talking about climate change, let's take this other occultish statement that Bernie came out with, because Bernie is apparently in support of abortion because it helps with population control and it helps with the climate change as well. I read this for the first time and I actually had to stop and read it to make sure that I wasn't reading The Onion or something. What did you see on this?
Well, I mean, I mentioned Factfulness by Hans Rosling before.
Mhm.
The fact, I mean, this is in the book, but which is a whole 6 years old. But we are seeing as the rate of poverty internationally has plummeted. We are seeing that population growth is stalling, and it will soon be at zero. We are seeing an overall birth rate of replacement on the earth. The entire growth right now is because of longer lifespans, and the idea that the Bernie is not cognizant of this, or is trying to ignore this, is very disturbing, honestly. And you know, the entire way this happened, the way that we had this plummet in poverty rate, was not thanks to socialism. It was thanks to capitalism, freer markets, not perfectly free, but freer markets, and hard work.
Mhm. And it's kind of ironic, too, that Bernie is choosing to ignore the fact that old age is part of what's causing population growth because he's 1,000 years old at this point. How is he still standing? I don't understand that.
Braces?
Apparently.
Yeah.
And
Well, when you're born in Brooklyn, you're pretty tough.
fair point. I guess I should have seen that one coming, but yeah, actually that is a fair point. But he's gone Vermont soft though as well. And I don't know if I lost you here or if
Yeah, I just lost you for a second there. You hear me now?
yeah, I can.
Okay. Where were we?
Uh, I got another visual aid here, so let me get that marked up here because Beto decided that he wanted to talk about guns this week. Now, Beto has been on a tirade about gun buybacks ever since the Odessa shooting came and fell out of the news again. But the Washington Examiner got to quote him this week on Twitter, and the Examiner says, to quote Beto O'Rourke, "No, I don't see the law enforcement going door to door. I see Americans complying with the law." The explanation of this, of course, at Beto O'Rourke does not envision his mandatory gun buyback plan, including door-to-door police visits, which the first thing I've got to ask when I say that is, how do you enforce something like that?
Poorly, I guess. That'd be the first thought on that. You need a registry, I guess, which was successfully done in such places as Nazi Germany,
Mm-hmm.
and
In socialist
you know,
California.
yeah, register your guns. The problem here is that law-abiding people do tend to follow the laws,
Mm-hmm.
but you know who really makes good use out of illegal guns? Really good use out of illegal guns? Criminals.
Absolutely.
People who wish to extort from you. People who, you know, there are so many things that are illegal that really shouldn't be illegal.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to actually forcing yourself on someone else in some way, taking away their things, raping them, murdering them, things like that, that definitely should be illegal. And a gun is really useful for that. And criminals tend to find good utility in having an illegal gun. Law-abiding citizens, sometimes they'll resist. Sometimes, you know, boating accidents, you lose it in the pond, something like that. But yeah, it tends to be much more effective against people who don't need to have their guns taken.
Well, and I laid out this argument. I was talking to my girlfriend about this. It was just last night we were talking about this actually. That's going to be the thing. The FBI does not have the manpower to go and do a door-to-door confiscation of guns. That's a reality that everybody's going to have to sit down and accept. Without a national registry, the FBI would actually have to go and physically search every single house, and they don't have the manpower to do that. They would have to sublet that out to various sheriff's departments and local police around the country. And I can envision what that conversation is going to be like, especially in rural Wisconsin. Now, over in Brooklyn, you might be screwed. In Chicago, they might be screwed. Los Angeles.
Yeah.
You don't. You said you don't, but I kind of cut you off there. I apologize.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, I was concurring. Yeah, we're screwed.
Yeah. So in the bigger cities with the big police departments like that, especially with the no nonsense types, yeah, they're gonna go door to door. They're gonna knock on your door. They're gonna take everything. Around here,
but you've seen how effective gun control is in places like Chicago, right? How there's all these laws in the books, and nobody gets murdered.
Oh, absolutely. But that's the other side. I mean, here, the deputy's going to come to my door, and he's going to say, J. Edgar, I want your guns. And I'm going to look back at him and I say, I'm glad you're here, deputy. Because I need to report a crime, because every single gun was stolen right after they passed that. And the deputy's going to look back at me, and he's going to say, oh, well, I guess we'll get out looking for that. Have a nice day.
Oh, unless they decide to make some version of AirPost that lets them search your house anytime they want.
No, that's the problem with that is they're not going. The locals in rural America are not going to enforce this law. I promise you. I know too many of them. They're going to make the show that they're enforcing the law. They're going to go to everyone's door. They're going to make it look like they're doing the search for it. And when they're done and they mysteriously didn't find anything, they'll tip their hat to the gentleman that owns the house or the lady that owns the house and say, I'll see you in church on Sunday. And that's going to be the end of it.
Well, that sounds like a peace officer. That does not sound like someone that's going to cause trouble and create problems where they weren't.
The only people in middle America that are actually going to get this enforcement done, if for some ungodly reason that this Second Amendment repeal ever happens, the only people that are going to be affected are domestic abusers that somehow can never seem to get a charge to stick to them.
That would actually seem fair.
Yeah. They have guns because they can't get a charge to stick to them, so, oh, well, now you can't have guns. Oh, I need to search your house. You know the types. They've been called out there 6 times for the guy and nothing sticks to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're the ones that are going to get affected by this.
Well, that might actually be a benefit.
Absolutely. So I've got one more story on the left side of this 2020 watch, and then we're going to shift over to the right side because we've actually got news over on the other side of the aisle this time. But we talked about Bernie Sanders' accelerated age, and now we got to talk about Joe Biden's accelerated age because he was on stage this past week, and he suddenly started bleeding from his eye out of nowhere.
Absolute cringe. Absolute cringe. I saw that. Yeah.
At what point do you stand there and say that these people are too old to be president?
You got me at a loss for words.
Now, I don't mind, like, Barack Obama was kind of I don't give him any other props other than the fact that I think he was at a good age to be president. There were a lot of people that said, oh, well, he's way too young to be president. Well, no. He had the energy, he had the stamina, he was able to get up when there was an emergency and go to it. He was able to handle the stresses of the job, and it took a toll on his relatively young body. I mean, you look at the guy and he had dark, rich brown hair when he first went into office. He was almost full white after 8 years.
It's a taxing job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, they say that he doesn't drink and he doesn't do drugs. I don't know if he's putting no-dos in his coffee or whatnot, but 71-year-old Donald Trump is able to keep up with the rigors of the job. I don't know how. It's a miracle of modern medicine, but he's able to do it, and he's able to do it somewhat effectively, I might add. But
Well, there had a kind of a regiment where he didn't sleep much, and that was just kind of that was just his style. So I I don't know if it has to do with the way he liked to do business and stuff like that, or what it was. But if I think that he didn't have to adapt a lot to a high stress, always on lifestyle.
well, no, between his social media appearances, his media appearances, and running the cutthroat businesses that he did, no, I think he was almost perfectly suited for that.
Yes.
And he's checking stocks in Japan at 4 a.m. before he was ever president. So, I mean, you got to keep that in mind as well. But
Yeah. So always on.
I mean, we look at that, and then we look at people like Joe Biden. We look at people like Bernie Sanders. Even Elizabeth Warren is almost 70 years old at this point, and all three of them are showing signs of slowing down.
Yeah. I mean, it's really. I remember it was kind of unfortunate during the last campaign back in 2016 that people were kind of attributing certain lack of vigor to Hillary because of like her gender or something. That was not it. She is an older lady, and that's much more the issue that you need to be healthy, ready to stand up, not falling down when you get into the car, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and she was 71 years old at the time, too.
Yeah. So I mean, no spring chicken.
But yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, I've heard some of the commenters talk about Joe Biden and the fact that I do think that part of the reason he's leading the polls right now is for the fact that I think most people want him to just go up there and sit in the easy chair in the West Wing and not do anything and let the progressives in the cabinet take over and do everything.
Be controlled. Well, this was a narrative that we had with Reagan. Remember, so I mean, there's two sides of the same coin. The idea whether or not an older president is going to be in charge of things, to what degree they delegate, to what degree they rein back in, or even able to rein back in. So I mean, I think that a lot of people said a lot at the time. A lot of people said some very questionably unkind things about President Reagan. So I think that a lot of it has to do with your management style, too. And if you're able to delegate things properly and stuff like that, you should be able to better handle it. But I don't know how else to put it. Just I don't see that from Joe.
I don't see it from Bernie either.
Oh no. Oh, Bernie's a control freak.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the man gets angry about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see him with the baby the other day?
I did not. I missed that one.
Can we shut that down? Can we shut that down, please? It's like it was. I mean, I wouldn't say that he went nuts or anything like that, but he was visibly flustered by a child crying in the audience at a distance. Then also with Bernie, I mean, we do need someone to work hard. And back in the 70s, he was kicked out of a commune for not working hard enough.
Yeah, I try not to bring that up when I talk about Bernie, just based on the fact that it goes on the same thing with Kavanaugh's yearbook and all this other stuff. I try to keep things within 10 years when I make criticisms. People do change.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, this is a free speech zone. You can say whatever's on your mind. But I mean, personally, when I make criticisms, I try and keep it for 10 years myself.
I respect that. I understand that.
So let's flip over to the other side of the aisle.
Okay.
So, Democrat strategist Alyssa Milano, which that's not actually her title, but that seems to be what she is right now, made a fuss on Twitter this morning saying the fact that the GOP has shut down primaries in 4 states, screaming about the fact that GOP voter suppression is so bad they don't even want Republicans to vote anymore. Now, the story comes behind our the story on this comes from the fact that, yes, indeed, the GOP has chosen at this point not to have primaries in 4 of their states because there is no viable contender to the incumbent president. And the state GOP would have to expend money that there's limited amounts of for something that's just going to wind up for the incumbent anyway. But this seems to be a problem for a lot of people on the left. And what do you think about this?
Well, I think that one thing that really has to be considered is the perspective. That I think a lot of people on the left are, I try to avoid my echo chambers. I try to listen to like-minded friends, but I also try to, listen to other things, try to get, be open-minded. I think that a lot of people on the left are in their echo chambers. They've been resisting since, day after the election 2016. And, they have this idea that there's no way this guy's getting reelected. So, like his viability doesn't seem as strong to them. While realistically, we see a clown car among the Democrats, and we see a president who's, got the lowest African American and Hispanic unemployment in history. We see a lot of other things going well right now. I mean, attributed to the president or don't, but things are going well, and that kind of tends to sway the electorate when it comes time to choose a president.
Mm-hmm. And, there is that, but I think, and I can't attribute anything to my opinion of Alyssa Milano versus what she's actually saying because I don't want to be inside of that mind. But one of the things that she's bringing up, the fact is that there are now 3 3 challengers that have stood up and say that they want to challenge the Donald for the presidency. We have Bill Weld, former running mate for Gary Johnson. Joe Walsh, not the cool one from the Eagles, the former representative for District 8 in Illinois, which is right around the corner from me, actually. And now Mark Sanford, a former representative and I believe current governor of South Carolina right now, have all 3 come in and said that they want to primary challenge the president. But I don't see any of them being viable currently. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, Joe Walsh is, if anything, more kind of face, but he doesn't have the substance behind it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that equation works for him. I mean, like he was
a super Trumper when Trump was first starting out.
I don't know exactly how he switched, but he was exactly what flipped the switch. No, that's not. I don't want to go into myself either. Mark Sanford is a nobody. Let's face it. At this point, Mark Sanford is a nobody. Bill Weld is, milk. He was kind of a libertarian for a while there, but you know what he was? Libertarian values are what the Republican Party. I don't know that
I lost a lot of that there.
I'm sorry. Where would you like me to start again? Can you hear me now?
I can, but that was more of a rant than I think that I want to try and have you repeat. But
okay.
I mean, I got the gist out of it. I mean, basically, Sanford and Walsh don't have the stamina to do this, and then Weld. That was what I was more interested in hearing about from you, from being liberty-minded, is the Bill Weld aspect of that.
Okay, well, he is not really that principled at the end. I mean, ostensibly, libertarian principles are what the Republican Party claims to have.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't tend to stick to their principles. Weld is not a very principled person, so I can't get excited over him. I don't see who the people who would get excited over him are.
The Johnsonites.
All 12 of them?
Yeah, pretty much. I never understood that campaign to begin with either.
Well, I mean, it's a firebrand party in a way, in some
Mm.
ways, if you look at it as a party, and then you end up with lukewarm candidates. So, I mean, I don't know where you go from there.
I mean, Keenan Wallace Dunn, who has been on this show before, would have made a more viable libertarian candidate than Gary Johnson would. All right. Let me look at some connection things here that are going on because I'm losing you in and out here, and I do have a segment of this section that does kind of revolve around you. So let me see what I've got. Okay, looks like I've got good connection everywhere. So let's get into the last part of this segment here. Um, You didn't see it on the itinerary, but there's 3 questions that I always ask all of my guests when they come on Ed's World. And they all revolve around what you want to see and what you see from the 2020 watch. Now, we do a lot of statistics on this show. We talk a lot about who's viable, who's not viable. But out of the 23 people that are currently running for president on the Democrat ticket, statistically, who do you think has the chance to be the nominee the most?
Elizabeth Warren.
You think Warren's going to jump up and take it? I mean, she's polling behind right now, but I also think that the DNC's got her got their head around her. So, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I think that Bernie's gonna be a no-go, and like nobody really wants him on the inside, and Joe's falling apart.
Physically and literally, I might add.
In any sense in it, yeah.
All right. So my next question is going to be if, like, let's say he's an old man. Let's say Trump strokes out on the campaign somewhere and Pence can't pull together an effective campaign after that. We have no challenger. If you have to choose any one of the 23 people that are currently running on the Democrat ticket, who is the lesser of 23 evils right now?
Well, Tulsi.
Tulsi? Isolationist. That's actually usually a pretty standard
I mean,
answer here.
She's like like every other one of them, she's total crap on domestic policy, but she at least keep our troops safe. Ed, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You distorted out and got really slow there, but we got all the words. They were just a little bit slow for a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So my last question is no statistics, no policy whatsoever. For pure entertainment value, which Democrat candidate do you want to see debate Trump going into the 2020 election?
Say that again, please.
No statistics and no policy behind this. For pure entertainment value and nothing else, which candidate do you want to see going against Trump in 2020?
Oh, Williamson. Yeah.
I get that answer all the time. And it's
She's
absolutely...
gloomy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's talk about Chappelle. Let's check in on live chat, though, first here. Let's see what we've got here. It's like, oh, Mr. Hilton has been quite busy out of this here. Gun buybacks, what next? Fork buybacks, car buybacks, bat buybacks, collectively, communism, punishing everyone for the actions of others is immoral.
True.
Again, talking about guns. He lost his in a boating accident. I'm not sure which candidate he was talking to about this, but he says being a murderer ages people. Must be Hillary. None of these challengers are viable. Bill Weld stood up for Hillary Clinton while he was Johnson's running mate. He has no loyalty or dedication of purpose. Reason libertarians appear to be lukewarm is because they are for liberty, not statism. Warren, Yang, and Gabbard will be the last 3 standing. That's a spicy take.
Yeah.
I don't think the DNC will put themselves behind Warren or Yang and Gabbard. Warren they are, but I don't think they'll stand behind the other ones.
I agree too. I mean, that's not going to happen.
All right, let's talk about Chappelle. So, this is about 2 weeks old, the special is at this point. We didn't talk about it last week, but the story hasn't stopped. And Dave Chappelle, who is a black Muslim liberal comedian, is the target of the left right now because he dared to speak out against censorship on Netflix. Now, there have been calls to have him taken down off of Netflix for very obvious reasons, of course. There have been calls to end his career, which I haven't heard anything from him for a while, but he was able to come out and do this great special, which I've seen only a part of at this point. I was intending to finish it before the stream, but I had to wind up finding a guest instead.
Catch the part after after the credits as well.
I've already heard that recommendation, and I absolutely will be doing that as well. But yeah, he's the target of everybody right now. And first off, I can't understand anybody wanting to take that off of Netflix because there's a lot worse stuff over there. But you've seen the special already. What did you think about it?
I think it was excellent. It was there were things I was offended at, and I think that there were probably things that some other people were offended at, and he's an equal opportunity offender. That's got to be the litmus test. You're not playing favorites. As a comedian, you need to kind of poke people where it's a little uncomfortable. You don't get a solid laugh if it's if it doesn't touch a nerve a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And he's also kind of there's some courage to kind of I'm hesitant to say speak the truth, but that's pretty much what it is. That that he's putting himself out there and he's willing to take the hits.
And that's absolutely true. I mean, there are other comedians out there that have, from what I've seen as well, Chappelle's mild with some of the hits that he's taken out, and that's why he's able to do that. I mean, I've seen other comedians, like Owen Benjamin has fallen completely off the wagon at this point, and he has crossed the line from being, funny and offensive to just being straight out conspiracy theorist at this point.
Oh, the moon landing and such?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, from what I've seen today on Instagram, it's moved on to flat Earth at this point. But you remember when comedy used to be funny?
You mean as opposed to just like saying Orange Man bad, this, that, the other thing?
Yeah. I sat up yesterday. I watched the Dennis Leary roast from 2004, which is hilarious. It was one of my favorite roasts that they did. And it was, from my understanding, it was one of the last really good ones because everybody that was up there was actually a friend of Leary's. But I counted 10 jokes that could not be made today, including in the opening when the transgender came up and took a leak next to Dennis in the bathroom.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that could not be made today. That there was absolutely no way. I mean, DePaulo would have never made it up on the stage on Comedy Central to begin with, but yeah, it's
well, yeah.
And it was funny. You don't see any of that anymore these days. I laugh at Ron White, but I mean, I saw even there, his last special was very sanitized compared to some of the stuff that we used to see. You remember when Carlin went on his rant about 9/11?
Yeah, vaguely, yeah. It was a while ago, though.
Yeah, I mean, he went after everybody at that. I mean, you understood that Carlin was no friend of the right when he was still alive, but he would be no friend of the left today if he still tried to make a lot of these jokes.
Well, the thing is, we have, some people that need to be protected these days, as opposed to standing on their own 2 feet. That's not going to work with comedy,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can make 10 times made jokes about dad. The typical like sitcom or typical ad for a household product where dad's a buffoon and obviously dad doesn't know what he's doing and he has no clue. But heaven forbid you make one joke about that crossdresser down the street. One.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the identitarianism and such like that. I mean, I understand how that whole thing was founded to try to be like, okay, we're all together in this. That I'm a minority, you're a minority. All these other just kind of pulling together to create a base of power.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, we're all individuals, and when all you do is identify as like I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing, you're not being true to yourself.
I want to take a step off of this topic and what used to be funny, and I want to take a step onto the reaction to everybody and what they're trying to do now. Because as I mentioned when we were going into this topic, one of the first things that everyone wants to do is try and get this special taken off of Netflix because a certain group of people don't like what Dave Chappelle was saying. I'm not allowed to like it. I'm not allowed to watch it. I'm not allowed to view it. And if, God forbid, some lefty is watching this show right now, which thankfully this is a small enough channel, I don't think they are, but God forbid some lefty is watching this, goes through, here's what I'm talking about, the Larry Roast. Finds out that it's still on Amazon. How fast do you think they're going to push Amazon to go and get this pulled off of the air? Because, again, number one, they'd be holding the Leary Roast to the standards of today, even though it's 15 years old at this point. But number two, there are jokes in there that are offensive to transgender people, to gay people. There are 9/11 jokes in there. There's racial jokes in there. There's every possible thing that could have been done was done in that.
Just lost you for a second there.
That's fine.
All right, you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think that I'd hope that someone would be open-minded. That's ostensibly what the left is supposed to be, and they'd actually give it a thought. But I think that silencing is a pretty big tactic these days, and the thing you most want to silence is anything that resembles the truth, or that oh, I'm gonna have a little laugh, and that's like the gateway drug into actually listening to people.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
So
you pay more attention to what makes you laugh than anything else.
Yeah.
Why do you think the sitcom era was so powerful in the 90s? I mean, there were documentaries, dramas, and everything else, but all you ever heard about was Home Improvement and Friends.
Sorry, it's just lost it for a second there. All right, I'm hearing you now. What were you saying the last second there?
Oh, the last thing I was saying is, I mean, you pay attention to the stuff that makes you laugh, and that always seems to be what becomes more popular with everything. I mean, there were tons of dramas out there, dramatic movies out there. Law and Order started in the 90s. There were all kinds of dramatic TV shows out there, but what did we hear about in the 90s? Home Improvement and Friends.
Yeah, I mean, just well, it's relatable. It's something that like you feel an emotion. You feel, you can relate to what the comic is saying.
All right, I got. I want to check our live stream or our chat here just to see what we've got going on. Then I've got one more topic here for you. So looks like Ron says Chappelle has always been a big proponent of freedom of speech. Watch Sticks and Stones, not gut-wrenching funny, but it was good. Even watched the bonus footage at the end. No spoilers. I still have to go back and see this. So we've got one more topic here for us here before we move out of this. Tim Pool, YouTube commenter, mostly left, but a lot of people think that he's on the right, was the victim of a trespass last week. And I actually wrote this topic when I wrote this in here, thinking about the fact that I had a social media influencer that was going to be my guest this week. And I do hope that she'll come back on because I do want to talk to her a bit about this. I'm going to save this. We're going to bookmark this. This is going to be, everyone is going to know this live. We're going to bookmark this for the next time that Jessica comes on this show. But Tim Pool was the victim of a trespass. And I mean, being a public figure presents all kinds of challenges to begin with. But I think for her it would have been even harder because Tim Pool is a single guy. And she is a mother with a family there that there's 3 people in her house that she would have had to protect instead of just the one. But I want to talk a bit about the fact that any one of us could have this happen to us, no matter how small our channels are, no matter how small our presences are, especially in the day and age where they will try and silence anybody that talks about things that they don't like us to talk about. Did you see anything about this?
Actually, not before the show notes. No, I did not.
Okay. So from what I saw at about 4 o'clock in the morning on Monday, a home invader was rifling around Tim Pool's backyard, and he knocked on the door. I guess he's got a security system where he had maybe a ring or something where he was able to talk to the guy out there. The guy said that he was a fan, that he had walked all the way, he'd walked like 40, 50 miles from like Philadelphia or something to go and talk to Tim Pool face to face. And this was at like 4 o'clock in the morning. The police were called. The police had dealt with everything. But while Tim was talking about this on the air, he was also hearing a large amount of noise and somebody beating on the door the next day. And this was during the daytime. So, on 2 different occasions, people were in his property trying to talk to him and possibly had some other malicious intent involved.
You know about the milkshaking, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is the thing. There's been an encouragement of inappropriate behavior. I mean, I think that it's right to hold public officials to account, and there are reasons that the libel and other laws are different for public officials than, or folks that are in the spotlight, than for very private citizens. But there's having the conversation, and then there's like attacking someone. We need to respect each other's privacy and personal space, and and don't hurt people. Don't invade their homes. I mean, it's I don't know how this thought process being inculcated into people, and it's probably the most weak-minded who are most apt to engage in these activities.
Well, the idea that goes along behind it is the fact that yes, they want to go out and I think try and silence the opposition. And like I said, Tim is a lefty. He's a left-wing guy. He's come out and said that a lot, but he says a lot of things on a lot of his news stations that don't go along with the modern left-wing narrative. He's not big onto socialism. He's not big onto progressivism or anything like that. He's the Democrat that I was up until 2008 when I first read Barack Obama's proposal plan.
I think that there are a lot of Democrats. I think that honestly, at least half the Democrats, the voters, are not near the most prominent elected officials that we see on a regular basis. And I don't know how skewed the elected officials' view is, that they think that the most loud voices in the room are the voices of the people. But I do really get the sense that that the more visible folks within the Democratic Party are skewing toward a more extreme view than most of the people who are registered as Democrats.
Mm-hmm. And it's the extremist ones out there that are the ones that are coming out and doing this and trying to take care of the people that are the more central-minded, centrist people out there. And I do understand the fact that there's possibility that this could happen. I mean, I've got 124 subscribers on my channel right now. I've got a small YouTube channel, but just the same, I mean, we talked about it off mic. You had asked what to call because I don't think you had seen this show before. You had volunteered to come on to this. But I don't use my first name. I use my first initial, and I don't use my last name.
Mm-hmm.
My family did not sign up to be a YouTube commenter. I did.
Yeah.
And I've been going back and forth on my personal Facebook, which, I mean, that's never linked anywhere, but I've been going back and forth on going onto my personal Facebook, taking my last name off of there, and untagging all of my family, and maybe even getting rid of some of the pictures on there, because, once again, they didn't sign up for any of this. This is my thing. And I would just be beside myself if something happened to one of them, because I want to make a difference in this world.
Yeah. It's I think it's kind of unprecedented degree to which public figures. Hear me?
Yeah, it's just it was distorted there for a little bit. It was unprecedented, and then you started slowing down a lot.
Yeah, I was saying just like the degree to which it's almost seems to have become acceptable to invade people's homes. I mean, you saw what happened with Tucker Carlson. I mean,
That's another good point.
I mean, someone's trying to break down your door. You have every right to shoot them in the face.
Well, he wasn't there. His
Exactly.
wife and his
Well,
kid
I mean,
were there, and they were hiding in a pantry.
Yeah, I mean, and that is unacceptable. I mean, I'm not even saying him shooting them in the face. I'm saying whoever's at home shooting them in the face.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not for violence. I'm a very peaceful person by nature, but that's not acceptable.
And I'm about to say something that might be confused as anti-Semitic, but I'm not talking about this anti-Semitically, but I mean, the fact that people are beating on the door because of something that somebody else said, and then the innocent people have to hide in a pantry, that's some Anne Frank kind of level stuff right there.
There's nothing
In your
anti-Semitic
own
about
home, on top
That's
of
a
it.
clear analogy. Yeah.
In your own home, on top of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is persecution.
Yeah. So.
I mean, I was, as I mentioned previously, I was, the president of my neighborhood association for a while, and, we most of the stuff we dealt with was everybody was pretty happy with what we do, and, occasionally there are people who really, really, really don't like what you're doing, and, they make themselves known, and they become a thorn in your side. I had a lawsuit I had to deal with, by a very unscrupulous individual. People kind of project some of their own pain onto those that perhaps are more prominent and visible than them.
That's fair. Well,
Hello?
I said that's fair. Well, I'm going to check the live chat one more time here, and then I think it's time for us to run down through the outro. So, let's see.
Cool.
Yeah. Last comment also comes from Ron Helton, and he advises me to delete Facebook. Well, it does make a good advertising tool, so I'm going to keep it around for a little bit, but I will go ahead and possibly limit some of the information that's on there. So, last question that I always ask the guest on the show, and because we talk about so many dark things, I mean, we had to close on a very dark topic here. So we want to end on a light note. So, Quest, tell us about a hobby that you have that has nothing to do with politics or work. It could be a video game you picked up, an album you're listening to, just something that helps you unwind.
I play soccer. I'm 39 years old and I'm still playing. I organize a meetup, and it's really fun to get out there in the morning on Sundays and hit the field and at my advanced age be probably one of the less good players in the field, but still do my part.
Don't say advanced age. You're not that much older than I am.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, Ed.
Well, thank you for coming and bailing me out at the end of last minute. That was great. And to the audience that's watching on live or back on demand, if you want to finish the conversation with me, first I want to thank everyone for participating in the live chat. It looks like Ron was the only one for the most part today, but we'll have more people participating in the future. But if you want to finish the conversation with me, you can find me over on Twitter. That's at Ed's Blog Twitter with a 1 in place of the I. Or you can look down in the description below this video. You can find all kinds of other places where you can find me and finish the conversation. If you want to finish the conversation with Quest, tell us where they can find you.
Quest Fanning. It's at Quest Fanning on Twitter.
Okay. And I actually took the liberty of linking that in the description below the show notes when I started everything out, so you can run down there and find that as well. And hey, while you're running down and finding that in the description, why don't you go down there and hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already, or hit that like button. That really helps to show YouTube what people should be watching. And the same over on BitChute, that helps to let the companies over there know what people should be watching as well. Ed's World is available on audio platforms, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, and will be available tomorrow morning for download on all of those platforms. If you're on iTunes, please leave us that 5-star rating and a good review. That helps us move up the charts and helps us reach out our message to more people. Lastly, Ed's World is proudly partnered with the Freedom Scoop Media Group, and we are still holding open casting for writers over there. If you feel that you want to contribute to a website with free speech, why don't you go ahead and email me. That's edsblogtwitter@gmail.com. We'll get you a sample article, and we'll see if we can't get you published. And don't forget to head over to Freedom Scoop, which is linked in the description below, and check out those t-shirts and help out a good cause for Hurricane Dorian. As we always say on this show, never take the words of bloggers, podcasters, or journalists as gospel. Find all the facts and draw your own conclusions. Quest, you have last word.
Well, I think that thinking for yourself is a good last note, so I'll just echo it.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Night.